a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbour as yourself." And he said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbour?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while travelling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend." Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbour to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? He said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." May the words of my lips and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. So I'm going to start with a retelling of the Good Samaritan by Roger Spiller. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he said to himself, "I have no first aid skills with which to help. I can do more for that man by praying in the temple. I will not indulge my morbid curiosity by taking a closer look." And he crossed over on the other side and sped on his way to the place of prayer. So likewise a Levite, when he came to that place. But a Samaritan, when he saw him, welcomed the opportunity to burnish his reputation and ingratiate himself with his hostile neighbours. So he went to the man, bound up his wounds with an unsterile cloth, and poured over contaminated oil. Then he set him on his own beast, which, because of the man's spinal injuries, caused permanent paralysis. It's disorientating, I suspect. Disturbing, really, to hear a familiar parable turned upside down. And some of you, I suspect, may think I've taken liberties with the text. But I'll plead with you that this is the sort of reading that those listening to Jesus for the first time would most likely have expected and hoped for. The Samaritan was meant to be the bad guy, putting the Samaritan in his place and infirming the worth of the invisible religious practices of the priest and the Levite. That would have been the usual story of the time. Instead, just when we imagine his hearers beginning to relax their guard and settle down to hear a good story, Jesus delivers a shock and surprise that blows their world apart. And it's that new story that's now become so familiar to us that I suspect it no longer shocks us. And that's why just now we reverse the familiar storyline to make a case for that defence. However familiar we are with this parable, I think it's a really important one to return to again and again, to reflect on it and to be moved by it. It's a parable that cuts to the core of our prejudices. And whilst today it might not be Samaritans, when push comes to shove, I think we all have people that we prefer to see as the outsider, and we have people we prefer to cast as the hero of a story. I want you to notice the beginning of the story. It says that Jesus is asked a question by a lawyer. And it seems that that question is designed to deliberately be testing Jesus, to trying to trip him up. And so I ask you, when we approach Jesus, are we looking for the loophole? Are we looking for the trick or the excuse? Or are we really open to Jesus' challenge? And I think as we read on, it's interesting because it's in response to that further question that Jesus gives that lawyer the most stretching answers. I don't know if you ever find that when we're most open to Jesus, to listening to him, that it's then that we find ourselves stretched, that he challenges us to go further. And I think we're really stretched with today's parable. Who is my neighbour? Our neighbour can be anyone we encounter, especially those in need of help. And the opportunities are boundless for us all to give care, to act in a spirit of love in all of our relationships. Jesus turns the Jewish lawyer's worldview completely topsy-turvy. Who is properly qualified to inherit eternal life? Those who are among the most respected in society in that story fail to help the one in need. And contrary to all expectation, it's that despised Samaritan who turns out to be the true neighbour. Eternal life is his because he mirrors God. That is so deeply shocking. And this parable challenges our deep-seated presumptions and our prejudices, because it's that Samaritan that showed himself to be Christ-like. He is moved with pity and shows mercy. How Christ-like are we in our thoughts and attitudes, our words and deeds, especially when we think no one's looking? When you read this story, I wonder, do you ever imagine yourself as any of the characters, and who do you most relate to? I have to say, in my role now as priest, I'm continually challenged by this parable because there's someone with the role of priest in it. I know that time is finite and that we cannot reach out and help everyone around us. So am I open to God? And am I responding to those that I most need to? But I suspect most of us, as we read it, our tendency is to want to be the Good Samaritan. Sure, it's not just me. We want to believe that we will help anyone. We want to be virtuous and we want to feel that we care for others. But I want to challenge you today. I want you to put yourself in the role of the person that was attacked, the one that was left for dead by the robbers. Because when we think of what help will look like, or who might be able to help us, are we really open to the people that God may send? Or are we only open to help that looks a certain way or comes from a certain voice? For me personally, I was particularly challenged by this a couple of years ago. Many of you know that I had an eventful season in which I was really unwell, and eventually I had to be taken to A&E before I was admitted to psychiatric hospital. In the days leading up to hospital, I saw various people, friends, professionals, clergy, bishops, priests, doctors. And in those 2 days leading up to it, there were two people that particularly connected with me, that were able to be Christ to me and to reach me with that love and connection. And they were both unexpected. One of them was Elizabeth, my daughter, who was 7 at the time. She took me out on her swing in the garden, and she just talked with me and listened. She talked to me about superpowers and wonky superpowers, and that maybe some of Mummy's superpowers had gone a bit wonky. And she explained and prayed with me that it could be anyone that might be able to help me and to work out how to help and connect. And the following day, I was then lying on the floor of the accident and emergency department, and there were various professionals around me, doctors and a bishop, and it turned out to be a young man that was in distress there. He was also waiting for psychiatric care, and he was able to crouch down on the floor with me, to hold my hand and listen, and communicate that care. In those few days, neither of those people were the people I would traditionally be expecting to look for help. But when I read this parable now, I'm reminded of those two occasions. They're a really stark reminder to me to be open to the people that God actually puts around us, even when they don't look like what we imagine help will look like. And so my question to you is, are we willing to accept help? Or do we think we need to do it all on our own? Or do we think that help should look just a particular way or come from a particular professional? That man meeting up on the road was not expecting a Samaritan to help. It would be easy for him to be suspicious, to reject that help, to reject that care, to push it away. And this Sea Sunday, we're reminded of how global and connected the world is, and that question of who is our neighbour, who do we accept help from, and who do we give help to, is really pertinent. What does it mean for us to care for our neighbour? And what does it mean to accept care from our neighbour? As we care for each other in our church and our community, do we sometimes value some people's care more than others? Does a visit or a phone call somehow count for more if it's from the doctor or from a priest? Or are we able to value and appreciate the love and care from all those around us, however unexpected? Because each of us is living the lives we are in, here and now in this place. We're not in some hypothetical story. There are real people around us that we encounter every day. In our church here, out in our churchyard, on the streets, in our families, in our schools, in our workplaces, in Tesco or One Stop, when we're out and about. We can't be everywhere. We can't help everyone. But we are called to be present here now, in this place, and to be open to those around us, and to be open to receive help from those around us. So I'm going to end this morning with a poem from someone called Solomon Raj from India. Waiting for my Lord. I sat all day in the shade of the banyan tree, turning my face to the distant hills, and waited for my Lord to come. My heart pounded heavily with expectation, and my eyes burned. The morning passed away, and the noon melted into evening, and the evening into darkness, but he did not come. I recalled that a poor mother and her child passed by that way, then an old man with a bundle of firewood, and later a traveller who lost his way. I hardly even looked at them. At the fall of night, I went into my hut and lay awake on my bed with a heavy heart. And then I heard a voice saying, I passed by you thrice, but you did not see me. Are we willing to see Christ in those around us? Amen.